Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the Force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a job for me.
Where's the goodies?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. We're back and better than ever with a brand new show about Doctor Who. The Doctor Who convention on Long Island was just held. Long Island Doctor Who, they call it. And guess who was in attendance? Myself and the Mr. Who What Where David Cohen.
Yes.
And it was quite an event. We had a lot of fun, just like last year. I got some interviews with various stars of stage and screen, and we'll go through that. I just wanted to get an idea that this convention over the last couple of years has now grown to and was at the Hyatt Regency in Hop Hog, Long Island.
It's big time stuff.
Yeah, it used to be like they started out a little motel, kind of, and so they're growing. It's nice to see that. For those of you who don't know the show, of course, it's been on for 50 years. How do you not know what it is? And even if you are not a fan of the show, these interviews that we do are not necessarily interviews about Doctor Who per se, because these people have been asked these questions a million times. So let's try to dig into more information of other things. And this first person played a Dalek, who's an arch enemy, and participated as an actor, writer, director of many radio plays. Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with Barnaby Edwards. We're here at the Doctor Who convention on Long Island. Mr. Edwards was a Dalek operator in 1993 behind the scenes. Also an actor, director, performer on over 80 Big Finish Doctor Who audio stories and audio plays, and a little bit on the radio as well. So welcome, Mr. Edwards. Thank you for coming on board with Everything Old is New Again.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I want to turn a little... We will talk about Doctor Who. I'd love to. But I want to turn a little bit to our genre, a little bit of radio. Have you been a fan of radio your whole life?
Well, I mean, I don't know how much your listeners know about sort of the UK, but the BBC started out as a radio station long before it went into TV, and so everyone in Britain is brought up listening to sort of dramas on radio. Radio 4 constantly sort of plays them. So yeah, I grew up listening to lots of radio shows and comedy shows and sort of drama serials and stuff like that. So everyone in Britain is kind of steeped in the whole audio thing. So it was a really natural thing for me to go into directing radio and acting in radio and writing for radio.
But I'm a big fan of the old show called Radio Mystery Theater. It had E.G. Marshall was the host, Hyman Brown was the director. So it sounds like it looks like you're familiar with that performance and that show.
Funnily enough, I listen to it on planes sometimes. They have it on airplanes, I absolutely, because you did have it. You had Orson Welles did the famous War of the Worlds thing that resulted in a certain amount of controversy. But yeah, you have had it, and you used to get that whole thing in the 1950s and 60s, didn't you? Where when they were doing a movie in Hollywood, they would get Basil Rathbone or whoever or Ralph Richardson or whatever to come in and do a sort of half-hour thing for the radio. So yeah, you do have it. I think you just have to look slightly harder.
Yes, that was the old Lux Radio Theater. Remember, they would bring and perform for an hour the actual movie. They'd edit it down a little bit with the actual actors from the movie. So I'm glad you have that history, because we have that in common. It seems to be alive and well in Britain, but it's certainly that format of an audio play is not, as you said, it's harder to find. It's not as active and alive in the U.S. Do you think that there's any way to turn people back onto that?
Well, a Big Finish, the company that I work for a lot, who do all the audio Doctor Who's, and they have various other franchises, other sci-fi franchises. They release them on CD and download, and then they do sell them onto the BBC, so the BBC do play them over there, and they get, I think they get limited coverage over in the US. But I think things are slightly changing in the industry, because Audible, the world's largest audiobook provider, Audible are starting to do full cast dramas now, and they're selling quite well on Audible. So it may not be a radio broadcast, but they are full cast dramas with full special effects and sound design and music. So yeah, it is. I think it is gradually creeping over, because everyone can have, because of podcasts and stuff like that, everyone's used to having things on their mobile, on their cell phones and stuff like that, so they can listen to them wherever they go. And I think people commuting. I think we're in an upward curve.
So let's talk about Doctor Who a little bit. Obviously, you've done so much with Doctor Who. What do you love about this franchise so much?
Well, I mean, like you were just talking about you growing up listening to radio. I grew up watching Doctor Who. I was a kid and I absolutely loved Doctor Who. And if you told me when I was 7 years old that one day I would grow up to be in Doctor Who, I would just have melted. I've always loved the show because it's endlessly versatile. It's the greatest format ever created for television. You can go to any period in history. You can change the cast as often as you like. You can reuse the same set, or you can use completely different sets. It's so versatile and such a great method for telling so many different stories. You can tell historical stories, you can tell science fiction ones, or fantasy stories, or sort of romantic stories. So I think one of the main things I like about it is we're so used to, because I was a huge Star Trek fan as well, but Star Trek is a sort of Western in space, and cops and robbers and things like that. And Doctor Who, there are no guns involved in Doctor Who and things like that.
Hey, Barnaby,
it's about a man who has to constantly solve problems, not with a fist-fighting thing, but with sort of having to think about it. It's very interesting to know that since the 60s series of Star Trek, they've gradually gone into the same area. It's
Barnaby,
less about shooting people and having fisticuffs and more about thinking and that. And I think it attracts kids who like... they may not feel that they necessarily fit into various different areas of life, or they may have very slightly odd interests. And I think the great thing about like a program like Doctor Who is that it's everything for everyone. It's got a sort of anti-hero as the lead. He's not a sort of clean-cut standard issue hero. He's got issues himself and things like that. And I think it's fantastic because people sort of are attracted to it because it tells an interesting story and it's about a person who uses their brains rather than their fists to solve a problem.
Mr. Barnaby Edwards, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being an absolute pleasure. Good luck with everything you're doing. It's brilliant.
Mr. Edwards,
Dave, you never got a word in edgewise there. I don't know what happened.
it's like I didn't exist.
It's almost like you weren't there at the table
Almost.
with us, The poor guy. It was a great interview. He gets all riled up. But listen, talk about radio and Radio Mystery Theater. If that is obscure to you, tune that in on. You get some old radio plays from the 1970s. Remember those?
Tune it in from where, though?
From YouTube. They're all on YouTube, but $13.99. I should say there's 1,399 episodes are on YouTube. I tune them in every so often on the way to and from work after I've heard Everything Old is New Again, of course. Old New Again, Everything Old is New Again.biz. All right, so that's that gentleman, and he has a lot to say, and it's pretty interesting. How about Edward Russell, who is the Doctor Who brand manager? Let's see what that's all about.
Versatile.
The brand manager.
Stutters a bit, doesn't he?
Let's try that again. We're here with Edward Russell. In 2006, he became associated with Doctor Who as brand manager. Fan-focused merchandise and events is what he seems to be involved with. We'll find out. He manages the Doctor Who books, magazines, comics, responsible for photography for this show, and develops the show's iconic images, publicity, photos, websites. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You've been with Doctor Who now since 2006, the reincarnation, let's say. Growing, the show is growing, it's continuing. We're going to have a new Doctor coming up before long, a 13th Doctor. Besides relying upon the product itself to sell, because it's been around for 50 years and does have a history, how do you succeed in promoting Doctor Who, which means so much to so many?
I think we've got the benefit is that it constantly changes. Every series there's something new happening. You've either got a new Doctor or a new companion or a new lead writer. There's always something new to take an angle on, and that's really helpful.
How about promotion in general, the idea that the basic tenets of promotion, and did you bring that to the table? Is it something you can present to someone listening that would like to promote themselves? What can we learn from you and your promotion and your techniques that you've been successful at promoting Doctor Who?
That's a very interesting question. I think you can't pretend to be something you're not. Doctor Who it's a drama show at its heart. It's not a sci-fi show. It has sci-fi elements to it, but ultimately it's a drama show. It's heartfelt drama. There are scenes that make you cry, there are scenes that make you laugh, and so on and so forth. And I think you've got to go with whatever that is. You have to look at whatever material, whether it's yourself or whatever you're promoting, and see what's at the heart of it, and don't try and be something that you're not. You can't be, with Doctor Who, it can't compete with those big Marvel or DC films. It's not in the same ballpark, and it shouldn't try to. It needs to be what it really is, which is well-written, well-acted drama.
Mr.
With some
Russell,
great
this is David
sci-fi
Cohen.
effects in it as well.
Just a quick follow-up question.
You never seem to get the attention. You're just off. I don't know. You're Mr. Anonymous at these conventions. How is that happening?
I don't know. I mean,
You try to get the word in, and edgewise, you just can't do
you'll
it.
hear a little later where I'm starting to get a little irritated. It's like I'm completely invisible, but I guess it's just your personality just sort of takes over, and these people you're interviewing, they're just transfixed by you. And I'm just sort of like this little lackey.
When I wore the shirt, the Everything Old is New Again shirt, and you didn't, so maybe they thought you were there for
like some
technical
pesky
reasons.
fan,
right?
Someone who's just sort of like photobombing the interviews.
But you were sitting next to me,
I know.
I guess, I don't know. Who knows? Well,
It's right next
we'll
to
come back. Everything Old is New Again. Right after this, continue our interesting evaluation of and visit with all the Doctor Who stars at the Long Island Doctor Who Convention this past year, 2017.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hello, my name is Fraser Hines. I played Jamie McCrimmon, the longest-running companion in Doctor Who, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again, Jamie.
There we go. Everything Old is New Again, Jamie. That's Fraser Hines from the convention we went to 2 years ago. Right. And now, of course, we're back on Everything Old is New Again with David Cohen, talking all things Doctor Who, which seemed to be, it's really after 50 years, am I wrong? It's on the rise, or it's at its apex now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's completely been like reborn over the last, 5 years or so.
It may even be longer than that now you think about it, because it's been about 4 doctors now going on to the 5th Doctor.
Right.
So it's got to be a good 10 years plus that they reinvented themselves. And, it's an interesting bit of fantasy that they throw on the TV every week.
I can't wait till we start talking about the new Doctor, the woman who is the new Doctor Who.
Yes, next year's convention we could do that. They weren't too attuned. Most of the people there didn't know much about it, didn't care about it, didn't want to talk about it.
It's kind of weird.
It is weird, but I think they were all under orders that, because there's sort of this feeling that they want to have this aura. It's something brand new, and when it comes out, they want it to be this extravaganza that no one's talked about. Like a Star Wars movie.
I see.
When no one really knows what's happening. So I don't know. It seems like, from what I could tell from the convention, that's really what it was.
I see.
No one was nasty about it, but no one was like, they were basically, even the one fellow that we just had, the brand manager, was like, we're talking about Peter Capaldi now. We're not talking about the new one. We'll do that next year. I don't know. They don't want to get.
They don't want to maybe give away spoilers or take the shine off the surprise or anything like that.
Exactly. Okay. So I don't know. So speaking of which, talking about doctors, we met with Sylvester McCoy, who was the 7th Doctor, and he was one of the stars of the Hobbit trilogy, if you remember that.
Sure.
I know you're a big fan of those. So,
tell by my Hobbit trilogy shirt I'm wearing right now.
That's right. So let's see what he has to say, and then I want to talk about a little bit about Frank Langella and the original Dracula movie. We had an experience with that in high school, and he was in that movie as well. So just tune in and see what Sylvester McCoy has to say. Dave, I think you try to get a couple of words in edgewise here, too. We'll see if it works. We'll see. This is Douglas Viviani on Everything Old is New Again. We are at the Long Island Doctor Who Convention 2017 with Sylvester McCoy, who played the 7th incarnation of the Doctor in the Doctor Who series from 87 to 89. He reprised the role later on briefly in 96 in the beginning of the TV movie for the Doctor Who in the U.S. with Paul McCann as the 8th Doctor. Welcome to Everything Old is New Again, Sylvester McCoy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Do you go by Sly or
And I once
Sylvester?
was new, so I kind of fit the bill.
It sounds perfect. We're going to evaluate a little bit of what we do here. Everything Old is New Again takes a look at and celebrates the past and then introduces it to the present
and just to
looks
say,
to the future as to where it's going. And Doctor Who is perfect with that.
And I'm a big fan of
when
yours.
you started out playing this role, you played it with humor, and then it turned a little bit dark, and with the character being a little manipulative. Do you think that change was something that you welcomed? Were you part of that change?
Yeah, because I saw that.
Yes, no, it was one of my ideas. I mean, because Andrew Cartmel, the script editor, and myself were quite ignorant of Doctor Who. So we entered it with ignorance. We had no baggage to carry behind the history of it, and we just interpreted it the way we did. So when I arrived at first, my usual work was comic, and so I brought the comic element, and then started to learn how to do it, and then realised, wait a minute, this is an amazing part, and there's so much you can do with this part.
Was it a difficult
put into
transition?
It. And I wanted to bring back the mystery and the darkness and the weariness of longevity, partly because my grandmother had got to 103 months, and she was bright as a spark, a button, but had was weary of age. Of course, the doctor's 900. I've got to bring some of that in. And also the mystery. I wanted to bring back the mystery. We both did, Andrew and I. So no, we worked at that, knowing that we did upset the fans, because obviously Doctor Who fans, especially British ones, are very conservative. They like it the way they like it, and they're not. The British are not very good at change.
Take a look back at 1990. The Doctor Who magazine, if you're familiar, voted you and your performance at the time as the best Doctor to date.
And I
at
have
that
a copy
point. So
of
do
the
you
magazine.
think that had something to do with what you just mentioned, adding layers to the character and exploring a little bit more than had been explored before?
If you could
yes, I think so. But we didn't really. I have to underline, we didn't know that we were changing anything. This is just how we interpreted it. It was only later that discovered that we'd actually changed it. Peter Moffat told me once, Doctor Who had been cartoon-like up until then, and we'd come along and done something very different, and made it, as you say, more layers, deep, more mysterious and uncertain. And this was kind of, carried on into the 21st century Doctors.
And that's something that we love to celebrate with Everything Old is New Again. We look at, we're America's pop culture talk show, but we have fun paying homage into the past and celebrating the past and look at the past as the foundation to what we're enjoying in entertainment today. Do you see some of what you've done in performing the Seventh Doctor and in what they're doing today in the new incarnation of Doctor Who?
Yes, I have, and also people have told me as well. They've said, "Wow, that's Matt Smith seemed to take bits of you." And but anyway, he kind of took a mixture of people have told me this, and others have said. So obviously, yes, it's had an effect, and also it's quite natural because the young guys and girls that were watching my Doctor then grew up to be working and running Doctor Who. So it was my influence was in there, as well as Collins and and Peters. All our influences are there, and they keep coming out in the writing and creativity of the creative teams that make Doctor Who now.
Speaking of being influenced with others. You did participate in a favorite of mine in 1979 Dracula movie with yes, exactly, in Donald Pleasence. So the question is, did you bring or take anything from your experience with these older gentlemen at the time to your craft, to helping you develop your craft at all?
Well, no, it was kind of weird, really, because I was up for Renfield in the part, and I was dead right for it because I was skinny and neurotic, and I was dead right. But for some bizarre Hollywood reason, they decided to go for a different type of Renfield. They went for an Igor character, which was not in the book. But anyway, they went for him. And Tony Haygarth, who played it, is a marvellous actor. But they liked me because at the audition, because I made them laugh and I was nervous, and So they took the servant part and cut it in half and gave me one half of it and gave the other half to an older actor. But this is a huge Hollywood film. I'd never been in one, and I arrived again thinking they wanted me because of my comic, elements. And so I would do things like, there was one scene where I had to shoot at Dracula at a window, and so I took the gun, I shot it, and then flew back outside the frame, because of the gun. And the director was going, "Oh my God, what's this guy doing?" John Badham. And I just kept doing comic things. And then Donald Pleasence, who was absolutely delightful, well-named man, Pleasence, he was a lovely man. I was in New Year's Eve party, and John Badham said to me, he was a bit drunk, and he said, Sylvester, I think we're going to take all the bits we've cut out of this film of you, put it back in and turn it into a comedy. Sadly, they didn't. So I actually ended up doing very little in the screen.
I guess we could also say that in every drama there is room for a little bit of comedy too. Otherwise, it's real dark performance, a real dark product, and sometimes people don't always react to that. I guess no.
Yes, no. I mean, well, Shakespeare, he knew a thing or two, and he always had a comic. You know, in Macbeth, there's the poet. In Hamlet, there's the gravedigger. You know, he knew that you have to have that, allow the audience just before it gets to the really dark end. You've got to have a bit of laughter, a bit of explode. Otherwise, they'll explode.
I mean, if you're riding a roller coaster and you're riding down the entire time, I don't think it's going to work as well as up and down, if that makes sense.
Indeed, yes. But anyway, John Badham didn't know that.
Well, Sylvester McCoy, thank you so much for spending some time with us on Everything Old is New Again.
Sylvester, I just have, before we go, one more question. What do you think was the highlight of your performance as Doctor Who?
Dave, I hate to say it, he just got up and left. Yeah, it's no one acknowledging that you're even here.
I thought he heard me. I guess he didn't.
He may have heard you, but I think without the credentials, you're not wearing your lanyard with the press, label on it that I have here. You're not.
Is the ski mask off-putting? Maybe that's what it is.
That might be it. I know it's cold out, but I don't know. You're getting a little bit of a side stare here and there when we're interviewing people. The face still kind of points to me, but the eyeballs are looking to the right to look at you. They're a little bit concerned.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, okay. Well, so there he is. Now, he was in, we mentioned Dracula, right, with Sir Laurence Olivier. I remember going to see Dracula as a kid, and Frank Langella and his performance. And, at the time, that was going to be, and I was in high school, that was going to be my date of dates, and it was going to be romantic, and this guy was going to, Dracula was on the screen, and he was going to present all the things to this young lady sitting next to me that I couldn't do. I was figuring like I was going to live through him. He was going to get her in sort of a romantic mood. You know how Dracula's romantic? Does that make any sense?
Not at all. I can see where this is going right away.
Absolutely no sense
Such
to her
a bad
either.
choice for a movie date, but okay, go ahead. What happened?
So we walk out of the movie theater after all that, and I thought, all right, she's he's a good-looking guy and whatever, and maybe some aura will spill over into me, So I said, oh, that was really nice. How about we go for, we can get a little ice cream or something afterwards? She just gave me that, and I said, oh, well,
so not even a verbal response?
No, it was sort of like the eyes were moving, and it was a full moon out. I tried to make some joke about Dracula. I said, don't worry, I don't, turn into a werewolf.
Don't bite.
I don't bite and whatever. And needless to say, I took her straight home, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Frank. Frank Langella and Sylvester McCoy.
I assume you never went out again.
Many times I went out. I tried many times with this young lady. You know her from high school.
The same one.
Yes.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about. Okay.
And quite a number of times it fell on his face.
I'm just shocked she came back after that.
I guess a free movie here and there is appealing to a 16-year-old.
It was her version of Movie Pass back then. She got it for free just by having to go with you.
Exactly. And just say nothing when the movie is over, and I'll take you home.
There you go.
Right. All right. So we're having some fun at the Doctor Who convention, and we'll be back right after this, listening to the Dalek theme, and we'll come back and continue with some more interviews with the stars of Doctor Who.
Welcome. This is Davros from Doctor Who, and you are listening to Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen. Be very afraid.
Be very afraid of what you're going to hear on Everything Old is New Again with the Doctor Who convention on Long Island. We visited with the convention. We brought back a number of tapes here of interviews with the stars of this show. And I think it's a pretty good convention. It's a lot of fun. They give the press some free food there. That was pretty good. They gave us chips. They gave us water.
I tried to take some food, and some guard came over to me and asked me.
You didn't have the cake. You didn't have the.
I tried. I was
sandwich?
told. I was told to just step away from the dais over there.
I see. I'll leave you alone for a few minutes and.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but it was fun.
No, the sandwich was great. They had a nice eggplant
You seem to
parm.
enjoy it.
Yeah. I got a little bit on my shirt here, as a matter of fact. But all right, listen. We have Richard Ashton. He was the Ice Warrior in Doctor Who. He was in the show Vikings. He was also Little John in the New Adventures of Robin Hood. So he's somewhat known. He has a nice conversation with us. Let's listen.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with Richard Ashton. He played Friday, the Ice Warrior in season 10 versus Peter Capaldi. And also was Little John in the New Adventures of Robin Hood. Am I correct? Oh, yes. You reacted to that. That's good. As well as an appearance on Vikings, the show that I'm following, which I am enjoying. So thank you very much for joining us.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much.
How's it to play bad guy, the Ice Warrior, versus, let's say, a good guy in, what was it again? A Little John.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about the Ice Warriors. They're terrifying, they're huge, they're slightly inscrutable. And certainly when we first meet him, we think he's this kind of little scaly Labrador, cuddly character, whatever. Turns out he has his own agenda. They're fearsome, but they're not exactly bad guys. They just have this sort of their own integrity, their own warrior caste, as it were. It's kind of funny when you are 6'7", and I used to be quite a lot bigger than I am now. You have this big body to carry around, and then somebody gives you an even bigger body to carry around, which is almost from the sublime to the ridiculous, because within it I am probably the size of 2 telephone boxes, and if you start moving in a particular direction, that you're not going to stop, until you hit something. But then the greatest power from it came in the greatest stillness. That's what I learned. I was a puppeteer much earlier in my career, and one of the things I learned about is how objects move. If you're going to move in a particular way. And we did actually talk, about head angles and about rate of movement and sudden gestures, softer gestures. Give it this sort of integrity. And so in a way, you're playing an inside-out puppet. And that was the interesting thing for me. You stand there, and the smallest gesture has the biggest effect. It was quite interesting, yeah.
And what about the motivation? Like I say, it's not necessarily a bad guy per se, versus somebody that in Robin Hood is pretty much a good guy. So the good guy seems to be nice to play, but it seems like the other characters that have a little more depth seem to be a little more interesting, or not. You tell me.
Well, no, I think that's right. And I think that the truth is, when we see a character on screen, we all know that we have amazing, beautiful things within ourselves, and we have some things which are less attractive or less beneficial, perhaps even more harmful in ourselves. And most of us, if we're sort of functioning well, are constantly trying to negotiate between those. So in a character like Friday, yes, he's got this aim, which is to revivify his queen and to take over Mars and the universe, or whatever their ambitions are. But at the same time, he has a sense of honour and justice. And when he looks at the situation as is, he decides to side with the Doctor to oppose what he sees as injustice. So that's quite interesting. It's that business of, is it black hats and white hats, good guys and bad guys? No, there is what you seem to be just, and what you see in someone else as unjust. And as Friday, I got to make that choice, which is quite interesting.
Which is interesting is that it also relies upon a little bit of the past in that, well, let's just talk about Everything Old is New Again. It's a radio show that we celebrate the past. We try to introduce things that were done before, and take a look and see how they're affecting the genre today. And certainly, Doctor Who's right up the alley there with 50 years of history. When you came into that, did you bring any of that experience and or specifically with an Ice Warrior, the previous incarnations?
100%. I haven't done a biomechanical character since Fifth Amendment in the mid-90s. When the Ice Warrior came up, had to do it. If there was a chance, if they thought I was suitable, I had to do it. Great antecedent, Bernard Bresslaw was an Ice Warrior. He was a huge character when I was growing up. Great actor, didn't always get the dramatic parts he wanted, but always played them with an amazing truth. So there was lots of bits of history in that moment of getting to play that character. And I also remember, The Curse of Peladon. I remember that episode, I remember that series from when I was at school. So within me, there was a sense of me catching up with history, or history catching up with me. Everything old is new again. I like that. That's very good.
Thank you. And there's a little bit of a foundation there with the Vikings. Certainly there's a foundation with Robin Hood. Of course, there's been lots of incarnations. Let's take a look at the Vikings for a moment. There's not a lot on the screen before this show with Vikings. There's Kirk Douglas in the Vikings, if you've seen that. But other than that, not too much. So maybe you're breaking some new ground. But the idea is, between both of those, a genre, which is older forms, older stories, do you feel that the New Adventures and the new Vikings program is bringing something new to an older topic, let's say, or an older genre?
It has to be. It has to be. I mean, in the sense of the Vikings, in the sense of the story of Robin Hood, most cultures have some kind of local folk hero. We shot that in Lithuania. They have a folk hero, Tadas Blindus, who was real. You got your William Tell. Most cultures have that kind of hero character. Where do those sagas come from? They come from the Vikings. They come from the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, and they come from the Viking sagas. So actually, we are all retelling the same stories again and again and again. And the fact that we do that means that they must be relevant today, else nobody would watch them. When we did Doctor Who, the thing most prevalent in our mind was the Brexit vote, and we're talking about the creation of the Galactic Federation, and at the time the UK was considering leaving a federation of perhaps a similar kind, and I know that Mark Gatiss, when he was writing it, had that in mind, and there was even more specific references to it in the original script. These things are history, and history, of course, is what's happening to people today.
Yes, and history seems to repeat itself many times, and also there might be a touch of where you see that using older type of characters, let's say, to tell a contemporary story and a contemporary, let's say, morality play sometimes, and that seems to be something that is happening over and over again, and you're a part of. So how do you feel about that?
Oh, well, fantastic. I mean, these are the characters that we play. You know, whether it's Punchinello, whether it's the pantomime, whether it's the great monsters of the Universal era in the 30s. These characters are in our psyches for a reason. They won't go away, and if we can do them justice and present them to a younger generation, you know, I'm 52. I grew up with these characters as a kid. I would like young kids today to have the same characters, but they're made relevant to them, and in a way that they can play out that morality play. It is a morality play. Life is a morality play. What do I do? What, do I do this thing or that thing? What do I use as an example? What do I use as something to follow? And hopefully that's what we're all doing.
Thank you. I think you're doing it well, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on Everything Old is New Again. Richard Ashton, good luck in the future. Yes, Richard Ashton there had quite a bit to say talking about the Vikings. Have you ever seen that show, The Vikings?
No, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it's I think the 4th season now, maybe 5th. It's pretty good. It's a very interesting look at what it was like to be a Viking in the wars and all this that's going on. It's pretty historically accurate. I would recommend it. You get a kick out of it.
Okay.
And I love the idea that, of course, I keep on bringing up Old is New Again, what we're about, trying to I throw the hook out there to see if they know the show, or if they know the idea of the show, or if they agree with the idea of the show, or they acknowledge anything whatsoever that they're actually talking to a radio show.
Yeah, he actually acknowledged it.
Finally, someone actually said something, which is nice.
I tried a different tactic in the interview. I don't know if you heard me.
Yes.
I said nothing, hoping that Richard would acknowledge that I was actually sitting there. It was a different ploy.
He did give you a nod at one point, but that's when you had that Coke in your hand. I think he may have thought that you were going to be handing him the can of Coca-Cola.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping that wasn't it.
And then you opened it up and started drinking it yourself, so he gave you that look.
Yeah.
You know?
But at least he acknowledged I was there.
Well,
so
yes. We're gaining speed here. It's now, at least you're in the room.
Yes, I'm very, very appreciative of that.
You have any comments about that interview? He spoke about those Universal monsters. That was interesting. We did a show on those. We've had visits from those Universal monsters.
I thought at one point he mentioned that he's 6'7".
Right.
And then he said he used to be quite a bit bigger than I am now.
Right.
What did that mean? He shrunk?
Yeah, I guess we all settle. Our bones settle as we get older.
It didn't make any sense.
No, it really did. He's a behemoth sitting there in the chair next to you. And,
that was a bit
almost an Andre the Giant type. Not that much, but like you shake his hand and his hand goes all the way around his fingers go to the back of your hand.
He didn't shake my hand, but
no,
I can imagine.
Right, I forgot. Yeah, I have to maybe I should introduce you before we get rolling with all of that. You're sitting at the table. You're not wearing the lanyard. You don't have the shirt on. You've got the soda, and you've got something to say, but you're just not. I don't know what to say. You're like that bachelorette girl that's that can't get up off the couch and talk to the bachelor. She's too engrossed in what's going on.
I guess it would help to be acknowledged by you first. Yes, that's a good.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
Right.
All right. Well,
but he also mentioned something about an inside-out puppet, and when he said that, I think I just kind of my mind went elsewhere. I kept imagining what an inside-out puppet would look like.
Right. What would Kermit look like upside
really
down and
disgusting?
Yeah, it is. That's off-putting.
But
all right.
anyway.
Well, we might be off. We as a team might be off-putting to all these gentlemen. We'll find out as we get back. We talk to some others from the Doctor Who convention in Long Island. Doctor Who
is alive and well, and we're enjoying the convention experience with the Cybermen theme.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hey, this is Daphne Ashbrook, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again. It's lovely.
See that? Our show is lovely. This is Douglas Viviani with David Cohen here at the Long Island Who Convention 2017. What do you think?
Well, again, we're not there now, Doug. We're looking back, right? I just
Correct.
wanted to make sure.
That's true. We were there.
We were.
We're looking back at our experience and our interviews with the various stars of the show. And if you know the show, you know this character K9, which is a robot dog. John Lesson is the gentleman that voices the dog. Let's see if I had any. I sort of think that I had a little bit of a spat with him. You'll see in between the lines, see what went on here on Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani at the Doctor Who convention with John Leeson, the voice of K9 in Doctor Who since 1977. You were retained as a regular character to appeal to younger members of the audience, I would say, for about 61 episodes till 1988, and then 30 more times in the new incarnation, right? How about that, from 2009 to 2010, not to mention 3 spin-offs? Holy smokes. Thank you very much for joining us. Everything Old is New Again.
It was exhausting.
Exhausting already? That was exhausting. Wait till you finish with this interview, then you'll really feel what exhausting is like. Anyway, as a voice actor, you've got no ability at all to use your body language to act. So do you overemphasize certain things, or what do you do to try to present your emotions or intention just through your voice?
Okay, well, let's get one thing straight to start. The temptation to pigeonhole actors to do various things. You are a suit and tie actor. You are a theatre actor. You are a comedy actor. You're a voice actor. I'm just an actor. Bless you, bless you. But yes, indeed, you don't have visible movements to guide anybody's emotions or anything. But you have attitudes, and my goodness me, K9 had attitude. He was a pedant, he was a know-it-all, he was a smart-ass, and people say they love K9. I can't quite understand why. He's not really a very nice character.
Well, he's got that guise of being a dog, and isn't that every man's best friend? I don't know.
Yes, I dare say you're right. I dare say you're right.
What do you attribute the love of this character to, if you can even figure that out?
Simply, I think his ability to answer a doctor back. Basically, to be one step ahead of the game. Now, this actually has a classical theatrical precedent. Back in the late 17th century, 18th century, there was a syndrome or a theatrical convention called Commedia dell'arte, where the servant is the key protagonist, and the wily servant keeps his master out of trouble. And that has gone right down the ages through to buddy movies or whatever else. And that sort of model, I'm sure, is way, way down somewhere in the relationship between servant dog and master doctor.
Just one quick point. You are a wine aficionado in some ways, too. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm an accredited wine educator, a member of the Association of Wine Educators back in the UK.
What's the best way to start involving yourself in a little more fine wine?
Basically, be curious. Don't accept what's in front of you without asking questions about it. Where's it come from? What grapes has it been made from? Where have they been grown, particularly? And the more you drink, the more opportunities you have for drinking and tasting different wines, leads you inevitably to ask more and more about it. And it's just endless. Endless. It's wonderful.
I'd like to have a glass of wine right now just to kind of go through that interview again, a little less painful. What did you think of? It wasn't really that bad, was it?
I don't think it was bad at all. I think you kind of like set it up like it was
well,
some
he goes, first of all, I'm an actor, and, I am, you don't pigeonhole me, is this, that, and the other.
I didn't take it that way.
Oh, okay. I
didn't take it that way.
Good, all right.
I don't think he was upset with you. I just thought that, the question that you were asking, what do you do as a voice actor you meant as a voice actor in this role, because his role was as a voice actor. And I think he just wanted to, obviously, you touched a nerve.
Yeah.
Nothing you did personally, but he obviously has this thing in his head where, he doesn't want to be pigeonholed as a certain type of actor.
Right. Right, so maybe he's looking for parts and so forth, and they're all saying to him, "Well, you're just a voice actor," in quotes, I guess.
I guess, but I mean, look, you had a pretty good run here on Doctor Who as a voice actor, dude. Just go with it.
Yeah, he gave the voice in the beginning too of the dog,
voice,
so I figured let me go into that.
Of course.
All right, so I don't want to offend anybody. It seemed a little bit like
it just sounded like he was just ripe to be offended by anyone.
Exactly. And then he agreed. The basic point of the premise of the question you can't kind of avoid. You're not allowed to. You can't use anything but your voice. So how do you emote is really the question.
Right.
But anyway, all right. So it's not that interesting a question to begin with. So, but all right, let's get into Katy Manning, who was the third Doctor's companion for 2 seasons alongside John Pertwee, I guess is how you pronounce it. And she came back in 2010, joining Matt Smith for an episode. So let's listen to what she has to say. She's an old standby, a classic actress in the series. Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. We're here at the Long Island Doctor Who convention with Katy Manning, who played the companion Jo Grant in Doctor Who, side the third Doctor from 1971 to 73. And you voiced the same character for the Big Finish production audio plays from time to time.
Yes, but I also came back again.
I was going to say that. 2010 with Matt Smith.
Yes, and I'm now doing those on audio as well. So I do old Joe and young Joe, so everything old is new again. No.
There you go. See, it is.
When you watch Doctor Who, whoever you watch becomes your doctor, your companion, whatever. And so it was a wonderful story because, Jo is she kind of came back and does on this planet what she learnt from him and what he was doing out there. And to come back with this wonderful new unit team, because I'd started out working with, the Master, played by Roger Delgado, Nicholas Courtney, the Brigadier, so Lethbridge Stewart and all that, and Richard Franklin and so on. And it's lovely having Jo back, and she goes off with Osgood.
Well, I'll tell you, that's very interesting.
Osgood together is it's a wonderful combination. It really is. Cause
keeps it light also, which is nice a little bit. I said everything old is new again. We like to celebrate the past and present it to the future, or present it to the present, and see what's going to happen with the future, and
should learn, from the past. We should be learning from it. And sadly, this does not seem the case. People are sort of very frightened of change. I don't know whether you've noticed that people get very, when there's a new doctor being announced, whether we're going into the male-female, role, what ethnic qualifications, but people are a little, they get very used to something. And then once that change happens, they embrace it because they realize it works, But there is an awful lot to be learnt from our past.
Katie, who are you wearing?
You see that throughout the series as well, where there is always a continuous change, almost every 4 or 5 years it seems like, and then there's an uproar, and then the people see the stories and see the new adventures, and with an open mind leads you to the ability to really enjoy it and life.
Just have an open mind in everything you do in life, because our opinions are only acquired by listening to everybody else. You listen, and so it depends what radio you listen to, what TV you watch, what newspaper you read, etc. Opinions are formed on that, So you must always be extremely open and very changeable. Don't get stuck anywhere. And that's the great thing about Doctor Who. It hasn't got stuck anywhere, and the little break that it had was very vital because it made the massive leaps and changes that it needed to make. And yet what's so lovely about it is it comes back and you get little tiny pieces of the past that just so beautifully weave into the present of it, just little nods to where it's come from, and you think how many years that it's been on our screens. And the fans too are incredible people. They really are. I mean, this is why I like doing the conventions. I like doing the conventions because I adore the fans, and so many people have been had some terrible things happen to them in their lives, some quite traumatic, and then they're watching this program, and something happens. It gives them some hope, something else to believe in, something else to focus on, and that is, and to meet those people who've had their lives changed on that level is just touches my heart.
And you're touching our heart. We certainly appreciate your time. Thank you for coming to Long Island. And
the most sensible interview that I've given in years.
Save the best for last. Thank you very much. Enjoy the.
Thank you. So can I hug
Bye,
you?
Katie.
Absolutely.
You know, David, what did you think of that interview? You enjoyed being with her, but she had her own little agenda there and kind of didn't, I don't know what she was wearing. She didn't answer that question. You were kind of, I don't know, you fell through the cracks again.
I did. I tried.
Poor guy. But, you know, she was vibrant and she was exciting and talking about everything old is new again. And I think she'll go home to London and talk to all of her friends about our show as a result of that interview.
Oh, that's the first thing I'll do, yes.
Very sensible individuals with a sensible interview with her. But I think it was...
I wonder what the other interviews were like.
That would be interesting to hear. We are out of time, unfortunately, and we had a great time at the Long Island Doctor Who convention. We're looking forward to next year's convention. David, do you want to say goodbye?
That would be cool, yeah. Well, I might not be there next year because it seemed pretty fruitless for me to...
Oh, I'll bring an extra microphone at least, or two, and this way you can... Or a megaphone, so if you ask a question, they can't ignore you. All right, we'll be back next week to enjoy some more pop culture with Douglas Viviani, David Cohen on Everything Old is New Again. You've been listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's pop culture entertainment talk show. Find us on the web at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.